What's up, everybody? This is Gin, and welcome to my next podcast in the series that I'm making to help you guys learn English faster and prepare for your IELTS test a lot more effectively. And today we're gonna talk about why some students have very negative experience at school. They just constantly struggle academically. And of course, we're also gonna talk about how we can help them improve their academic performance. Right, so let's talk about the reasons why they are struggling academically. Right, so what seems to be at the core of some young people having such a negative experience in the classroom is probably connected to the quality of teaching. Well, just think about some incompetent, unmotivated, or uncaring teachers. It is just unrealistic to expect these people to be able to control and inspire their students. So this often leads to very high levels of disruption and even truancy, both of which are very serious problems that many schools around the world are facing. And oftentimes, teachers have to teach a class where they have mixed levels of students in a class. And this is incredibly difficult for teachers to come up with a lesson that suits both spectrums of students. And as a result, some students just find the material used in the class too easy, so they lose interest in what they are studying. And some just find it incredibly difficult to keep up with their friends. And this also demotivates them. And another reason is that children often idolize some famous people who have all the wealth in the world, and they often think that wealth and outward appearance is just something that is held in right regard by society nowadays, and being intelligent or having a good grasp of knowledge is not really something that is necessarily held in high regard these days. So even though they may excel at school, they are not really recognized or praised by their peers. And this surely incentivizes them to study more diligently. So it is incredibly common to see children these days compete with each other materialistically. And we can see this in the way many young people actually take a lot of pride in having or owning the latest pair of Nike instead of having good grades in the class. Well, I think this kind of thinking is incredibly damaging to their overall development, because they may develop a false sense of security, and this makes them think that having materialistic possessions is more important than the acquisition of knowledge. Right, so what can be done about it? Should we retrain the teachers? Sure, if it's the case, if the problem appears to be associated with the quality of teachers, I do think that teachers should be retrained. And if the curriculum and the course content seems to be too easy or too difficult for the general student, I do think that it should be redesigned. Well, in this process, I think the participation of experts in pedagogy is indeed needed, because they will be able to reassess the course books and websites used to ensure that they are relevant and appropriate. And the quality of the teachers should also be reassessed by experienced teachers or pedagogical experts. But the problem of young people having a false understanding of what is important in our society is really hard to tackle, because changing social attitudes is a tremendous undertaking, and I don't think that we can do it overnight. And this surely requires the participation of famous people, celebrities, movie stars, famous footballers, sportsmen, and also people who are influential in other fields such as business and politics. because these people do like have a tremendous amount of bearing on young people. And if they set a positive example to these young people, they can actually help them think more positively and have a better understanding of what is needed and what is really important in our society. However, again, this would surely require a huge amount of work, and it may not be achievable in the short run. So in short, the reasons why some youngsters experience difficulty in studying are probably related to the teaching quality and the underestimation of academic achievement. And there's only one way that we can actually do to improve the situation, which is to improve the quality of teaching, because we can expect other people to change their behaviors. Alright, so that was it about the problems of some students falling behind in an educational setting and what can be done about it. And let's move on to the next topic for today, which is about when a young person can leave school. What do you think about the appropriate age at which a person can actually leave school? Do you think that children under 16 should be allowed to leave school and find a full-time employment? Or should they be 18 and above? And this question is incredibly difficult to answer because it really depends on the situation of each country. So in my opinion, if a country is in need of manual workers, and they should allow 16-year-old kids to actually leave school and find a full-time employment. But if they need more people in the field of technology or science, I don't think that this country should actually encourage young people to leave school too early. And the decision should also depend on a child's goals and strengths too, because many young people actually thrive in an educational setting and they perform incredibly well in examinations. So these young people should be encouraged to go to college. But many people just don't really take an interest in studying whatsoever. So there's very little point in forcing these unwilling students to attend higher education, because they might as well cut class or misbehave or refuse to take their studies seriously. And this is surely a waste of finance and human resources. So deciding whether to let a 16-year-old kid to leave school to find employment should really depend on the kid's goals and strengths and also the situation of the country. For example, in Vietnam, a lot of students are going to university right now because the country is in need of skilled workers and people who work with their minds. But in the past, when manual workers were actually more needed, the number of people who were encouraged to pursue higher education was very low. But again, the situation is not really straightforward as we simplistically think, because many children actually experience labor exploitation after they left school too early. And in many countries, labor laws are not really enforced well, and there are not many laws that protect children when they work, which means that it can be really dangerous and it can be really harmful to children who actually choose to work when they are still very young. So if a child decides to actually leave school or leave their studies to go work somewhere, they should actually think about whether their well-being is being protected when they work there. If they got insurances and they got protective gears and stuff, and if they feel my work is in no way harmful to my health and my general well-being, then they should be allowed to work. Alright, so that's it for my discussion over the topic of whether a 16-year-old kid should be allowed to work, or like why some students actually fall behind academically. And hopefully you guys have learned something new, maybe. And I am incredibly grateful to your comments and feedback. I'll try to make this series better, and see you guys in the next podcast.